If you're building a new model railroad or a module and you're creatively challenged like myself, you're going to want to see this to help you along the way. I'm Tom Curvatures, and this is Tom's Trains and Things. I am building a module, exactly 2 modules for a new series that I'm doing for model railroading for beginners. And in that process, I have to figure out a track plan and figure out how I'm going to incorporate everything into it. And what I'm doing now is going through a bunch of these old publications, model railroading, planning, and great model railroads, and basic railroad track plans, and all kind of other publications, so I could figure out what I need to do on that module. I have 2 2x6 foot and 1 2x4 foot, and how I got to that is I went down to Home Depot and got a 4x8 sheet of plywood and got them to cut 2 foot down this way, have 2 foot off on one side, and then 2 foot right down the center. So that gives me on this one a 2x4 foot piece, and then 2 2x6 foot pieces. And another time I went there and I got all the 1x4s and 2x2s that I need. So I have the lumber that I need now. So I'm starting on it, and past couple of days I've been going through some of these publications right here, and I have quite a few of them. These right here on the table, and I have a couple of more binders down underneath that I have to go through also. But what I want to go through what you have to take into consideration when you're planning it. Now, I did a couple of videos on model railroading for beginners, on doing the bench work, on doing the track plans, how to figure out the track plans. I did a lot of it on how to get started on it. But this is going to be on a module, and I'm going to go through step by step on what I'm doing here. And you can see that I have a lot of publications to go through on here. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I want to go through some of the issues that I have when I'm doing this. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of tips first before I go anywhere else. And the first thing to do is whenever you're doing your bench work, make sure it's at the proper height. Now, you can see this one right here, and I'm sitting down right now on a bar stool, or sort of a bar stool, but this is the height that it is. Now, I could have went a little bit higher with that, but I chose to do it at that height because I wanted to be able to get underneath it, and from sitting on the floor still be able to get up and work on it without too much trouble, because when I started on it, I was still in my 60s, so, you know, I didn't have that much that I needed to go, you know, I didn't have that much strength, arm strength, to be working up there for a long period of time. Now I find out I can't do it at all, because if I do this, there's some things in my spine that restricts the blood flow to my brain, and I could pass out, because I did it on a ladder one time. I was looking up, I was putting these LED lights up on top, and I nearly passed out when I was up on the ladder. I had to hold on to, get down and just hold on to myself until I got the blood back into my head so I wouldn't pass out. But that's some of the things that you got to take into consideration when you get older. So that's what I want to talk about with the height. Make sure you have it at the proper height. Now, there are 2 options for me, since I'm going to be doing this in my living room, and it's only going to be a 2x6 foot module, a couple of them. And so I have the option of putting it up against the wall and hinging it so I could move it up and work on it like that. I'm only going to put it up as high, maybe as high as this, because I could still operate it working on a office chair. And since I have ceramic floors on the whole first floor, then I could roll around very easily with an office chair and operate the layout. Now, one thing that I'm going to do with the layout is it's going to be DCC++, and I'm going to be able to operate it with my cell phone. So that's another consideration, and I'll be able to do it, from my cell phone on an office chair, and be able to roll back and forth wherever I want to on it. But that's one consideration. You want to have it at the correct height. Now, even if you have children around, you're still going to want to have it a little bit higher than what they will see. You can always put a stool or something so they could look up, because they're not always going to be those small children. In a couple of years, they're going to be, a foot taller, and you're still going to have something down low for the little kids, and they're not going to be little anymore. So keep that in mind. Even though you have some small children now and you want to keep it down low for them, keep it up higher, because they're not going to be that small that long. Believe me, they grow up faster than you think. Okay, another thing you want to take into consideration is don't go too cheap with anything. If you're going to do it right. Spend the money on it now, because you don't want to skimp on things, like say, I'm using 1/2-inch plywood on it, and I'm going to use those 1-inch foam that I have, because that's the only thing that we could get down here. If we could get the 2-inch foam, I would use it. If I go to Sarasota, I'd be able to get some, but I'm not going to drive all the way to Sarasota to get some foam that I'm going to have to cut up to put in my SUV anyway, because it won't fit. But use what you can, but don't skimp on it. Use the quality. Like I said, I'm using 1/2-inch plywood. Don't try to go anything less than that. I mean, don't use 3/8-inch plywood or even 3/16-inch plywood. Maybe if you're doing it in an N scale, you can get away with that. But I would say keep it at a 1/2-inch minimum. That'll give you a nice solid base. And I'm bringing up my hillsides. Some of it's going to be with plaster Paris like I have here, but I have some of that pink foam that I'm going to use, and I'll tell you a little bit later how I'm going to use that. But anyway, that's about the cheap part. Don't go cheap. Now, I am going to be modeling in the 40s and 50s, so a lot of my rolling stock is 36 or 40 foot long. Even though I have short rolling stock, I'm still going to have the broad curves on there. I'm not going to skimp on the curves, and you shouldn't either. I mean, maybe you want to get that 18-inch radius in there because you got a 4 foot wide piece of plywood and you want to stick it all in there and make sure it fits. I mean, you can go just a little bit longer or a little bit wider, but it's not going to look good. Go that extra mile or go that extra inches or whatever it is. Even though mine's only 2 foot, I'm still going to have a 30-inch minimum radius on there. And that goes for the turnouts also. Now, I might go down to a number 4 turnout on it. I'd like to have number 6, but since this is only going to be 6 foot long and I'm going to have another one 6 foot long, I want to keep it in, have it so I have enough room to put enough turnouts in there. This is going to be a switching layout. What I have back here is not a switching layout. I run my trains continuously on this thing because that's what I like to see. I like to see it going around in circles. I have 2 complete circles here. But on the one that I'm building now, it's going to be a module. It's going to be, real short, 6 foot, maybe 12 foot. Maybe I'll have a little piece in there with a bridge in between the 2 modules. So, and I don't have that much room in my living room anyway. Let me see, I got 12 foot, 12, 34, 50, 16. I got maybe 20 foot at the maximum length. Also, if you're going to have grades in there. Now, I'm not going to have any grades, at least on the first module. I might have a slight grade on the second module I do, but don't go too steep with the grades. Now, we had a discussion on this on my live stream about what what everybody uses as a grade. Now on mine, I go about 1.5%, and that's pretty steep for anybody, unless you go to Cass Scenic Railroad, and we went up some grades that were as much as 12%, but that's with a Shay, and that's just with a couple of cars. So it depends on what you're doing. But I would not try to make it too steep just to get the elevation that you want. If you can't get it, then try something else. But try something with a lesser elevation with a lesser grade, because I think 1.5%, even 1% is a good grade. I mean, it takes a long time to get up, but you'll manage. You don't have to do everything all in a small space. You could stretch it out. And the next thing is use sufficient wiring. Okay. On what I have back here, I used Romex because I had a 250-foot roll that I had about 50 foot left over of it. So I used that as my bus wire. I stripped the Romex, used the black and white wire, and used the copper ground wire for something else. Put it off to the side, and I could use it for anything else. But I threw some of it away too. But don't try to skimp on the wiring. Don't think that you're going to make your bus wires really small and your feeder wires even smaller just because that's what you have on hand. If look at the charts, I have some other videos with the minimum for bus wires with minimum length and gauge for feeder wires on the different scales, and I'll put a link to that in the description of those videos where you could see those charts. But don't skimp, because you're going to be don't skimp, because you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot later on if you want to expand a little bit. Use the proper size wire. Don't try to piece wires together and use a lot of terminals just because you need 10 foot of wire and you only have 3 pieces of 3.5 foot wire. Don't use wire terminals to put them together just to get that 10 foot. Get yourself a 10-foot piece of wire. Get yourself longer than that. Get the right wire. Get the right gauge of wire, so you don't have to be worrying about it later on. Spend the money now on it, even though you don't have it. Find a way to do it. Wait for it, and then get it. Then that way you won't have to worry about it later on. You won't be running into problems with the possibility of that coming loose or get a little corrosion in that thing, and you have a problem and you can't find it because you got so many wire nuts in there, because you have to take all of them apart. And even if you take the wire nut off of it, you still have that connection in there, but you still might have a problem with that connection. When you say, oh, it looks good, put it back on, and you go back and you still have the problem. Then you have to go over. Believe me, I've done it I've been working on machinery for 40 years, and I've run into problems where people, just didn't have any good connections, and I had to go over and check over everybody's old connections and redo them just to get a piece of equipment working. So believe me, from experience, don't skimp on the wiring. Okay, now, things to take into consideration when you're figuring out your track plan. Okay, these publications right here, there's many of them. Model Railroad Planning, Great Model Railroads, Basic Model Railroad Track Plans. I mean, they go back for 20-some years. I got one right here, 1999. I think I have some that go back even further than that. Take a look at every possible track plan you can. Even though you don't use a track plan, it's in one of these books here, you might get an idea that you might be able to use a portion of a track plan in one of these books and put it together with another one from another book, and then use your head for the rest of it. Now, what I have vision for mine. Now, it's not in any of these books, and I've seen many photographs. I don't know where I saw the photographs, but I know you've seen them too, where you have two main lines going through a city. And now they'll be right on the outskirts of the city, and you have hillsides on both sides, and you may have a fence on either side, and you have apartment buildings, 4 or 5 stories or even 3 stories with clothes hanging up on, on the rails, and kids playing in the backyard. That's a scene that I want on there. Now, where I put that scene all depends on the track plan and the buildings that I have and how I get that switching for those buildings. And that's the other thing that I want to talk about. I have a lot of rolling stock that's 36 and 40 foot long. So what's that tell you? They're real short, and they're from, in the steam era. Now I'm going to be doing between 40s and 50s in the transition era. So I'm going to have some steam and I'm going to have some diesel in there, but most of my rolling stock is going to be 36 foot or 40 foot. I'm going to try to keep it 40 foot maximum for the rolling stock. Now I have some refrigerated boxcars. I have some regular boxcars. I have some cattle cars. I have some tank cars. I have some gondolas, but they're all 36 to 40 foot. And so I have to figure out what industries that I want to switch with those cars. Now, since I have a lot of reefers, I need an ice platform and I need an ice house. And I need maybe a meat packing house or someplace where, either vegetables or fruit to put in those refrigerated box cars. The regular box cars, any kind of product. Christmas gift wrap or anything else. I used to work in a Christmas gift wrap, and we had box cars lined up all on one side of the building that we shipped from in the box cars. We also had tractor trailers lined up on the other side. Some of it was bringing stuff in, and some of it was on the warehouse going out. So we used a lot of different things. We used box cars, and this was all Christmas gift wrap. So use your imagination on that. I have a lot of buildings that I'm building. So what I have to do is take the dimensions of those buildings and figure out where I'm going to put it on that module. And then from there, I could figure out how to switch in those buildings and what to use those buildings for, because I have tank cars also. So I got to find an industry that's going to use the tank cars that I have, and I could always go out to another train show and find some more tank cars that'll fit into what I have. The hoppers, you can just about put anything in the hoppers. You just about put anything in box cars. Same thing with the refrigerated box cars, with the icing station and whatever cold storage item that you want to put in those. You have to consider that. But that's what I want to put on mine, because that's the rolling stock that I have. So I'm going by the rolling stock and the buildings that I have to build yet. And now I'm going to use this one right here. That's going to go on there because I have something else for this spot right here. And what that is, that's a City Classics that I only used one thickness of it. I only used half of it, so it's only maybe 1.5 inches thick. Now I have another City Classics that's the entire rectangle that is 3 stories high that I'm going to put on the module also. So I have places on there where I could put track basically all the way up to the back end if I use flats. 1.5 inches out with this, 3 inches out with the other ones, and then I could stagger them to have them anywhere on the layout. So you got to think about that. Take that in consideration while you're doing that. This is going to be a learning experience for you and me. I'm making this a project for model railroading for beginners, where everything on there is going to be DCC++. I'm going to run it off of DCC++. Now I'm going to use a Mega and a Pololu motor shield for that. Okay, I may put it on a Raspberry Pi, I may not. It all depends. All the lighting, all the servos are going to be operated by Arduino. All the turnouts are going to be servo operated. Everything is going to be Arduino based. The DCC++ to operate it, so I'll be able to operate it with my cell phone, and I'll be able to sit there on my chair with the cell phone and operate the locomotives back and forth. And I don't know what I'm going to be using for uncoupling. I'll have to figure that out along the way. But this is the model railroading for beginners. I'm going to start from scratch. This is the track plan. I'm going to, once I figure out the track plan, I'm going to go through that process of showing you how I did that. Okay, right now I'm just in the beginning where I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm telling you what plans that I have that could help you in planning your model railroad or your module. And you could follow along with, me building the Benchwork, me laying the track, I'm going to use the pink foam that I have. I have two 1 inch thick, I think it's 1 inch thick 2x2 pink foam. That's the only thing we can get down here. As soon as I figure out my track plan and something close, because it's never going to be finished. I have it right here on the bottom of the page. For me, work in progress. So that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a work in progress, because no matter how many times I think that I have what I want for that, I'm always going to change it, and every model railroader has done the same thing. It's a learning experience for me, it's a learning experience for you, and I'm going to show you how to do everything as far as step by step, from the track planning right here, researching the track plan, and figuring out how you're going to put it into your module or layout. So I hope this helps. It's helping me out a lot, because it's helping me figure out what I want to do, and thinking about more things that I want to do while I'm talking to you about doing it. So until the next time, we'll see you.